If I didn't tell you, you wouldn't know which one was 12 megapixel and which one was 24. But I'm going to tell you. This one is 24 megapixel and this one is 12 megapixel. They're huge. Long story short, if you get to about this much of a viewing distance, you will be able to tell the difference between 12 and 24 megapixels on this size print. However, if you're working with smaller prints, like that one over there, or that one over there, those are 18-inch wide, and they were shot on a 12 megapixel 5D Classic from Canon. You won't be able to tell the difference between a higher quality one because they're mixed and match. 42 megapixels, 24, 12. I have mix and match resolutions on the wall, and that's how I got to the high megapixel rabbit hole, is because I was printing stuff. And when you start printing stuff, you start photographing a lot. That's kind of how gear happens. I mean, that's kind of how gas happens. I get gas because I'm out in the field photographing, and then when I get back to print it, I may find, okay, yeah, if I compare one to the other, I can see the smallest difference. But generally speaking, something this size of a print is it's pretty good on 24 megapixels. It's pin sharp to the very corners, and every little detail you can see people laying on the beach and, you know, just having a good time, whatever. So I do see the point of having a really high megapixel camera, because if you're going to make the effort, if you're going to take your chances to go out in the field and then find out, okay, going to print these items and I want the highest quality I can get, 12 megapixels may not cut it for you. But if you don't really print these types of photos, and you could live with the limitations of not being able to put your face like directly on a photo, like if you're looking from here, there's just no way you can tell that this was shot from 12 megapixels compared to a higher megapixel count. It's kind of difficult to tell. Well, I guess it's possible, but it is a little bit difficult to tell. And as photographers, we do like to pin our nose right up to one of those large prints. I'm guilty of that. The first time I seen pictures printed by Peter Lick, I was just astonished about the amount of detail that he has into his photos. If you don't know Peter Lick, he's a fine art photographer and really extravagant guy. And he has prints like the size of that closet. I mean, these are just humongous size gallery prints, and you can walk right up to it and it is so sharp, even like right at it. Okay, so he does some upscaling. I'm not really sure, because I know that even on a bigger format camera, you can't just get like hundreds of megapixels in resolution to resolve something that big and clear. Moving on. So we're here to talk about 12 megapixels, and I just want to give you a better understanding of what it means when we're talking about this A7S3 in terms of photography. 12 megapixels might not be that bad if you're gonna put some context behind it. Okay, right here I have a comparison of the original EOS 5D, a 12 megapixel camera, EM1 Mark II, which is 20 megapixels, and a 7D Mark II, which is 20 megapixels. And what you can see is that because of the large sensor, the 5D and its paltry 12 megapixels mounted with the Canon EF Nifty 50 can resolve 11 megapixels. So it's working almost near theoretical limit of the sensor. However, when you look at something else like the EM1 Mark II, A7D Mark II, these are 20 megapixel cameras, but they're also smaller sensors. And the smaller sensors have a more difficult time actually resolving that resolution because the sensor is just much smaller than the full frame sensor. That's not to bash it. I'm completely okay with it. I shoot with Micro Four Thirds as well. But I just have to put it in context of photography that when you're shooting the small sensors, you will run into problem resolving a lot more than 12 megapixels. Okay, if you find the finest lens, you'll be lucky to resolve like an actual 16 megapixels, but that's what the most highest end lens you can get. Look at, you can see right there here, this Sigma 30 f1.4 only resolves 10 megapixels on the A7D Mark II, which is a 20 megapixel camera. Same with this EM1 Mark II. So when you're talking about the 12 megapixels of the A7S Mark III, we're talking about 12 of the finest megapixels you can get. My iPhone takes 12 megapixels, but the image quality is nowhere on par of the Canon 5D, for instance. It's just not happening. You're not going to have the tonal gradations. You're not going to have the color. You're not going to have the low light ability. You're not going to have the interchangeable lens system. So I get the idea that people may not like this camera for the 12 megapixels. Just keep in mind that if you are using this for photography and you're not really printing larger than those 18-inch prints on the wall, you're going to be pretty happy with the image quality. For me, it's not going to be a deal breaker. I don't really care too much about megapixels anymore. I used to do care a lot about it, but if you're going into photography with this camera, if you're using this camera as a hybrid, photos and video, and you're afraid of what 12 megapixels may do to your photography, I say don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal unless you start printing. And in this day and age, I think people are printing less and probably posting to social media a lot more than before. I know that I haven't printed a whole lot these days. I still print 4x6s just because it's like my duty as a parent to print my children's photos and put them in the album. But aside from that, all of this printing I do is just for fun, and you know, I've printed for other people that have requested. I don't think it's too big of a deal not having a high megapixel camera, and that's my opinion on this camera. I'm not too concerned about high megapixel cameras, and if I really needed another high megapixel camera, then I can always just grab an A7R Mark II for really inexpensive. And that's all I can say about the megapixels. And I get the idea that some people may want an all-in-one with the high megapixel, high frame rate, stunning video features. I just don't see that being realistic or happening. If I have to upscale something, I'll consider gigapixel AI software, but the chances of that happening is very slim. I don't print very large stuff unless somebody asks me to, or like a specific photo. And my bigger prints, you know, I don't even own them because, you know, that's somebody else asked for it. And that concludes this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you haven't done already, please smash the like button and hit the subscribe and the bell. See you next time. Thank you.